We're on.
Carl, welcome.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
How's it on the flip side, mate? Haven't seen you for a bit.
Oh, been hanging on. It's been pretty good actually. Like most people, to sort of reflect on, I guess how you do your day-to-day stuff. So it's changed a lot, but it's good for the better, I guess.
You look busy, mate.
Yeah, a little bit.
No, you do.
That's what I was going to say. Real busy.
You're growing it out.
Busy week. Staying busy, but all the rugby stuff sort of dried up because we haven't been able to play, but or train for that matter. So there's a bit more free time to crack on with the uni and that. But yeah, staying relatively busy.
Yeah, beautiful, mate.
So, we may as well segue straight into uni. So you're doing your masters?
Yeah. Started my masters this year at UTS.
Cool.
It's cracking into that.
Nice, mate. Nice. And you've done a bachelor before?
Yeah. So finished up my bachelor in exercise science in 2018 from UAW. So done ASCA level 2 pending article, which is a punish to write, but pending on the article there, and and then just started the UTS Masters.
Fantastic.
This year.
So for those of you that don't know, Carl joined us at DBPT. We did have him on an earlier podcast, which you could go back and listen to and review. But we got him back on today because he's an expert in his field. And we're going to talk to you a little bit today about improving your aerobic capacity for CrossFit or functional fitness.
Beautiful.
Sounds
good.
Sounds good. Beautiful. So it was actually funny. Luke threw up a question on our Instagram handle, and someone sort of wrote back, "What's aerobic capacity mean?" So it might be a good place to start.
Yeah.
Start at the start is usually a good way to go. So essentially aerobic capacity is the body's ability to produce energy, or ATP, aerobically. So what most people would know as your VO2 max.
Okay. Perfect.
The capacity of the system.
And aerobically using oxygen?
Yes, in the presence of oxygen, yeah.
Okay. And what kind of timeframes? So we've got a couple of different systems there. So I think most people are familiar with 0 to 10 seconds. And then we've got the 0 to 60 seconds, and then aerobically is more pretty much anything past that. Yeah.
Well, so the comment, what was previously thought was it's sequential in nature, but all systems are present at all time. Mm-hmm. Just more so the dominance of the actual system. So you've got your creatine phosphate system first 10 seconds out to capacity of about 20. Then you got your lactate system, which is up to around about 90 seconds. And then past that, it's predominantly aerobic. But it's all there. It's all present. It's just sort of the dominance.
Cool. And I think probably the other question on that would be, to relate it back to CrossFit, pretty much, there's not too many workouts that are over in 90 seconds. So pretty much, as you said, you're working aerobically regardless. But most CrossFit workouts are going to be predominantly the aerobic system and how well you can utilize oxygen. Yeah,
massively. Most of them last longer than 90 seconds in general, you'd hope.
Yeah.
The aerobic system's always in the background. Without it, we would be dead.
Yep.
It's always ticking away in the background. It really fuels your recovery as well.
Okay.
So I think when we say cardio or the aerobic system to our client base, they're thinking running. But what you're saying is that a Metcon that's, probably 2 minutes or greater, whether it be an AMRAP or whatever, we're using the aerobic system so we can train that without actually having to put our runners on and go and hit the tarmac.
Massively. There's lots of different ways. And I think the common term cardio is sort of interchangeable with aerobic based endurance. But so if you look at the aerobic capacity, a lot of people would miss the respiratory system as well. So it's not just your cardiovascular system.
Okay. So in regards to CrossFit, then there seems to be a trend where we sort of throw a workout out there and it's, you know, a 9-minute AMRAP and everyone just goes and redlines and sort of sits at that, you know, high heart rate, 170, 180 max, and dies. What you're saying is that we should be looking to sort of possibly pace that workout a little bit more, work at a lower heart rate zone, and become more efficient at it. We don't have to sort of redline every session.
Yeah, so absolutely. Like redline sessions have their place. I'm not saying they don't have their place at all, but you sort of, if you look at overall stress to the body, those high intensity interval trainings are quite strenuous. So your ability to recover is diminished from after that. So the more lower intensity sessions you have throughout your training week, is you have your capacity to do more volume of work, which then leads and funnels up towards those more high intensity efforts.
Okay.
Fantastic. So yeah, redline all the time is a sure way to end up injured and not doing anything at all.
Look, it's a common thing, you know, we see it every week, you know, in CrossFit boxes around the world. People are going in and just thrashing themselves every day. How many times a week would you believe that we should be sort of hitting that heart rate zone or working at that high intensity? And is working at that heart rate and high intensity zone 4 or 5 days a week beneficial to improving fitness?
So it depends on the sort of sport. So with CrossFit, like, I mean, no, I wouldn't say 5 times a week we've hit. It's quite prevalent, as you were saying. I'd probably go maximum 2 days a week with true high intensity training. A lot of the time, people think they're doing HIIT. However, the rest periods aren't high enough to actually elicit those high heart rates. Yeah. So you're actually doing an aerobic capacity workout in more of a lactic zone. So you feel it's not true aerobic capacity work where I'm talking more lower end of the spectrum of our heart rate zones. It's sort of in that middle ground where there's not as much sort of area for improvement. It's a lot of it's genetic. So we're sort of just getting better at doing that, but not really efficiently. So your form's usually sloppy, and then your outputs actually usually don't go up. So I think a while ago I was saying we want to train above or below to try and get that improvement there.
I think that probably leads me into the next question, which would be, should we be setting them up into, I mean, we went roughly through the systems before, but I guess an easy way to do it is, you know, aerobically through the heart rate zones. I think, as we kind of just said, a lot of people are probably just floating in that middle zone, probably, you know, I would say roughly between like 150 to 170, 180, somewhere between there. So you'd say it's more effective to break. I think we went through it on the last podcast, but to break it up into higher and then lower, rather than doing 3 or 4 sessions just kind of sitting at the middle.
Are you saying on the heart rate zones?
Yeah.
So anything under 160 beats a minute, I'd usually classify as a lower intensity capacity. So, absolutely. So minimizing our time in those sort of middle no man's land workouts, where there's usually it's just sort of to do as much as you can. It's sort of no man's land. So having a clear objective for your sessions is probably where I'd base that.
Okay, cool.
And I'm not sure, like, your training history in regards to like CrossFit or how much sort of research you've done into the methodology, but it seems to be that way where it's just like thrown out there. It's a 20-minute AMRAP. There's no real specifics given to it. It's no, this is the desired outcome, or this is what we're trying to achieve. And what you'll see is most people sitting in that mid zone, and then it'll be a sprint to finish. It'll be like, oh, I've got 2 minutes left. Let's try and see how many more reps we can get out so we can beat our mate on the floor. That seems to be what it's about. So I think I mean, my idea of having this podcast with you was to give more education around that area, to maybe sit back and go, okay, what's the time domain? What kind of exercises have they given us? What's the loading? And try and break down a workout and work out, for yourself what the desired outcome is for that session. Like, I know, for example, if I throw some gymnastics movements in there, that the athletes are going to have to slow down. Okay, for the most part, right? Because you can't work through those quickly. Like if it's a and walk or strict ring muscle ups or something like that, it's going to force them to pace, and we might outline that. But we want to make people aware today that they don't have to go out and redline every session. So what's a good way for them to sort of work, whether it be a high skill movement or an intensity on a bike or a rower, for them to be able to go, okay, I'm going to pace this workout, I should really slow it down?
So just touching on what you said just before, those workouts where we're competing with a mate, particularly in a sport like CrossFit where you are, it's competition. They absolutely have their place. I'm not knocking that. And I think they're a vital part of training in general, not just for CrossFit.
Yeah.
Was it how to base sort of gauge your own sessions?
Yeah.
So there's a few ways I'll do it. I'll start like, I just do the talk test. If you haven't done any testing, you don't have a heart rate monitor, you don't have anything sort of qualitative or quantitative to measure, I do the talk test. So essentially what the majority of my sessions will look like earlier on when we're preparing for competition will be if you can have a conversation with someone, not a sit down chat over coffee, but more we could converse about how your day's been or something like that in between breaths. So it's not labored breathing. We're not trying to catch our breath. You can hold that pace for, you should be able to hold that pace for about 60 minutes or more.
Yeah.
Usually about a 4 out of 10. Sometimes I like to use RPE, but for inexperienced trainers, they don't really know what a 4 out of 10 looks like. Like we were saying, a lot of time they just go in a red line and like, yeah, that was a 10 out of 10. It's just like, well, you didn't actually hit any targets you used to hit, so it wasn't a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
So the talk test is one thing I use. So more of those low intensity ones should be able to have a bit of a chat while we train. Then more of our moderate intensities, we're a bit more out of breath, get a few words in, might have one word replies. And then sort of the near max training is don't talk to me. I'm
near max.
Just shut up, basically.
Yeah. That's a good way of, I think, self-regulating, because I know for myself, especially when I run, I don't know how to pace myself, right? And I've had to work out ways to sort of slow myself down. Otherwise I end up, like we sort of said before, get injured or really stiff and sore and can't do anything. So if there's not a Metcon where there's a gymnastics movement to slow you down, you can use that, having a conversation with a friend throughout it. Can I talk? And then also the RPE sort of system as well, if you've got an understanding of that, to be able to, slow your pace down and handle that kind of workout.
Yeah, if you've got access to a heart rate monitor, like I don't know a lot of the watches have in it. I mean, most of them have been proved to be relatively inaccurate. But I think that's a very valuable tool. And, with the aerobic capacity stuff, sort of our lower end, I know Garmin, and I'm not sponsored by Garmin or anything like that. The Garmin's pretty accurate. So if you have a heart rate strap, I always find it useful too with myself and the guys that I train, knowing what sort of efforts elicit certain heart rate ranges, and being able to regulate from that. So if you can actually physically watch your heart rate go up and down and change with the intensity of exercise, it carries over a lot to be able to pace yourself in your event.
Yeah.
So, all right, this is what it feels like to be at 180 beats a minute. This is 108 beats a minute. I'm going to start crashing soon. Or when my heart rate drops down to say 130, 120 beats a minute, okay, I'm relatively well recovered. I can go at it again. So
Yeah, right.
that could be one if they're not super expensive, but that could be another means to, if you want to step up from there.
Yeah. So just to reiterate, the wrist kind of devices are pretty much not even worthwhile paying attention to, because I think they've been proven to be
they're pretty inaccurate. It's more so, I mean, there are a few studies on it. So if you can literally just look it up on Google and it'll pop up with the best ones. I mean, if it's reliable, you can tweak it to yourself. But if it's not valid, then it's completely useless. So valid means, so the wristwatch, even heart rate. So like if it's reliable, it might be 10 beats off what you actually are, but it always goes 10 beats is always 10 beats off. Whereas it might be 5 beats off or 8 beats off or 20 beats off. So it's completely valid. That doesn't work. So find ones that are reliable and then use them.
Yeah. And then treating that as like an education tool more than anything, like this is what this feels like. So, and then when you go into a workout, you don't have to be looking at your watch going, at what beats am I at? You kind of know where you're at, what you've got. I guess like anything, it's just experience. Like how much of the workout have I got left? Am I hitting 160 now? Or am I, I've got 15 minutes left. If I'm into the 170s, I need to, back it back. So it's all just about kind of self-regulating and experiencing what that feels like. And then in order to pace, there's not going to be a really kind of secret way or a generalized way for everyone to pace the same. So, I mean, that's probably, so breathing rate and then heart rate are two of the ways where you look to quantify that.
I think it's
I'd go heart rate, breathing rate, not as much.
Okay.
The torque test a little bit different with the breathing rate. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's fantastic, because I think that's what we need to start doing as CrossFitters is create more awareness around our own abilities. And that's what I actually really enjoy about the sport. You get to learn a lot about yourself, but too many people just go in and just don't think about it and just think they've got to go as fast as possible and move as much weight as possible. Probably one of the greatest examples of it would be James Newbury. I've seen him do events so often. And and Matt Fraser as well, obviously, but just talking about an Australian CrossFitter, and he sets his own pace, right? You see all these people come out red hot and move past him, and he slowly just moves past each athlete and ends up taking out the event because he can self-regulate. He knows his body so well. And I think that's so powerful in CrossFit.
Exactly. He knows his operating zone. So it's like one of the measurements we use in footy and running-based sports and anything really is MAS, so max aerobic speed. So that's the velocity at which you elicit your VO2 max. And slightly below that is what I call anyway an operating speed. So he obviously knows his speed that he can operate at and sustain that for an extended period of time. Yeah, which is the valuable thing.
That's awesome. And I think that's what's so good about the sport, but I think it gets butchered so often, because we just go in and just hit the gas and end up burning out. So just for people, right? Because there's going to be people out there that truly believe that they compete at local CrossFit comps, and in those local CrossFit comps, they've got to go as hard as possible. There is benefits from training the aerobic system that will cross over into that, I guess, anaerobic high intensity workout. So if you improve your aerobic system, you will get better at those shorter, faster workouts.
Massively. Yeah. It improves your ability to recover in between efforts too.
Yeah.
With the workouts we were just talking about before, the lower heart rate ranges, realistically, like you when you've done one of those correctly to a good intensity, you finish and you feel fresh. You feel good. You don't come out there feeling like after one of the WODs where I need to sit in my car for 15, 20 minutes. Like that was crazy. You feel good. You feel revitalized. The ANS system is starting to do its work, basically recover. So it's your rest and digest. Yeah. And so you'll find after that, maybe the next day, when you go in to do maybe one of your hard WODs, you might actually be refreshed, ready to go.
Fresh, better to do
starting
it.
Good, yeah.
Yeah. So to improve your recovery at, say, the assault bike, I'm not just going to keep smashing myself on the assault bike. I'm going to look at improving my aerobic system, because that's going to possibly help remove lactate waste afterwards, or help me with the ability to possibly move on and do a heavy clean or a box jumps or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, a good way to measure if your aerobic capacity is increasing, a quick way to do it, if you can measure your heart rate, is essentially, Joel Jamieson uses it with his fighters. He basically, so you got 1 minute in between a round is where they sort of got it from, is the amount of beats per minute your heart rate drops in a minute after you cessation of an exercise.
Yeah.
So if you find your heart rate might peak, especially during HIIT, your heart rate might peak at 180, 190 beats a minute. And then we might see that week 1, we drop down to 160. So we're not really fully recovered in between that effort. Week 2, maybe 150 in that 1 minute. And then by hopefully week 4, 5, 6, we're getting down to about 120 beats a minute. And that really means that your system is able to flush out those waste products, get more oxygen to the working muscles, and really regulate that heart rate.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. So when can I embrace my inner David Goggins and just go fucking balls to the wall? So is that what we're talking? Maybe 2 times a week? Like we're talking a lot about, sitting at submax and like to build that aerobic capacity. Is there a place at all where we're hitting like in your hit or something like that, where you're hitting 190 and then you're looking to drop that right back down? Or is there an advantage to hitting those max zones?
Yeah, there's actually an advantage to it. It's just the adaptations are a lot quicker. So you see a bit more rapid adaptations, and that's why it's sort of risen. I can get all these adaptations that I could from this long, steady state stuff. Okay. But I can do it in 4 weeks. How good is this?
Yeah.
So it's quicker, but it's got a faster ceiling. Okay. So with our more lower level, low intensity, it's more central adaptation. So we see over a long time, we see a greater base or a greater adaptation. But the HIIT sessions, I like to start incorporating them as I get closer and closer to competition. So if we can get those adaptations from a lower intensity, lower stress to the system, why not? Yeah. But as we get closer and closer, we need to start, obviously, as we adapt, we need to start upping the stress, upping the intensity. So that's where those HIIT sessions can really start to come in to effect.
Yeah, cool.
But the one other thing with that 190 is we start to get stroke volume, which is one of the big determinants of aerobic capacity. Larger stroke volumes, it puts it under more stress, so we can see a little bit more adaptation hypertrophy in the heart. Okay, so it has its place, but I would start using it closer and closer to competition. And if you were to use it earlier on, 1 session, and then we might progress to 2 sessions as we come along.
Okay. And probably one of the big negatives that you mentioned there was its overall kind of stress on the body, and that impacting our other training, possibly?
Yeah.
So if you can do that if you can get the same or a similar adaptation with a lower stress, essentially, why not?
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
But Carl,
excuse me. Yes.
I love fucking smashing myself every day. That's why I love CrossFit. Fucking take away why I enjoy CrossFit.
You should get an ice bath.
That's some of the feedback you're going to get as a strength and conditioning coach, or as a coach.
Yeah.
We enjoy CrossFit because we come in and we redline, we lift heavy, we smash ourselves every day. What would your response be to that person? And I guess on a segue to that, how can we still do what we love but train smarter?
It definitely comes down to your planning of the week. So, but like you were saying earlier before, like 5 HIIT sessions a week, probably not the best idea. Yeah. Finding days within your week where, okay, we could probably hit a HIIT session here, and I'd have them broken up with those lower intensity sessions. Now, those lower intensity sessions, like we can still get to 160, maybe a little bit more. So although it's steady state in nature, we're still going to feel good, taxed after it. And it doesn't have to be a run or a 60 minutes on a bike, or 60 minutes on a rower, or anything like that. You can make circuits, aerobic capacity circuits, where you're refining the movements that you do in CrossFit and doing it under a little bit of fatigue and getting better at your movement efficiency. So yeah, 2 days a week. I mean, you could definitely do a HIIT session 2 days a week, flog yourself, but just ensuring we're not doing them back to back.
Yeah. So what would a week look like? Let's take away from the fact that there's a lot of modalities within CrossFit. Let's just talk about low and high intensity. How could we map that out? Is it 2 low, 1 high? Is it like, what would be ideal?
On a full, say 7 day?
Yeah.
7 day. Yeah, cool. So
most CrossFit
is 7. Yeah. So Monday I would usually do a lower intensity day, technique day, your steady state stuff. Tuesday, get after it, chuck a HIIT session in there. We might do a mobility WOD on a Wednesday, and then the great thing about your steady state stuff is, particularly if it's off feet, you can really get it in on that Wednesday. There's no reason you can't.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could optional for another one there, and then potentially have a slightly ramped up steady state session on the Thursday, and then Friday we get after it again. Saturday could be another session there, and then Sunday off mobility WOD. Yeah. So
one thing that you might have thrown at you, and I guess where you can explain the 2 different systems, but someone might say, I did high intensity Monday, but it was mainly lower body. It was like, squats and box jumps and sprints. Can I do higher intensity on Monday, but use my upper body? Tuesday, sorry. Like, is there a difference between that?
Yeah. You could definitely do a higher intensity day. As far as system load, like, you're not going to get the beauty of your doing upper body. The stress to the system isn't as much as it would be from a lower body session. So as far as a whole system load goes, a lower body session, you're going to feel a lot more tax from that. And then, yeah, the upper body session, I mean, if you wanted to, you could definitely go hard there.
But am I obviously training the muscular system, but if I'm working in the same heart rate zone, is that the same, therefore, intensity?
So
like if I'm doing lower body and then upper body, right, back to back days, but they're a WOD and they're high intensity and I'm working at a higher heart rate zone, is that the same thing, but I'm just working different muscle groups?
Essentially, yeah. It's just total system stress. So yeah, you're not going to get as much forces through the body.
So that wouldn't be ideal, is what I'm saying, because I know some of the feedback I get from clients is, but yesterday was mainly lower body. Like today, I'm just going to do an upper body WOD. But it's essentially the same thing if we're working in the same heart rate zone.
Yeah, exactly. We're still stressing the cardiovascular system quite high. You actually get higher heart rates quicker with upper body work.
There you go. I didn't know that.
There's a fact.
Onset at least.
So before we dive into a little bit of possibly programming structure across the board, is there any sort of basic tests people can do to find out what their aerobic capacity is at this point in time?
Maybe can we also touch on lactate a little bit as well? Because I know that's a massive misconception with everyone.
Yeah, massively. We'll do the test first. So if we're talking about aerobic capacity tests, obviously for CrossFit, there's lots of different modalities. So if we want to be prescriptive with our training, I mean, it'd be awesome to know what's in your event, but if we don't know that, we have to prepare for all possible outcomes. So you'd be looking at anything that takes you over 6 minutes is usually saying that you see good markers where it's predominantly aerobic. So you could have a 6-minute row test. You could have a one in rugby we use as a 1.2 shuttle time trial. Ski as well, you could do a 6-minute test there. Any distance as well, you could do a 1K ski, which is it's probably a bit too short, a 1K ski, but just anything that usually takes 6 to 8 minutes is a good indication of what your capacity could be. And we can start using those figures to start being prescriptive with your efforts on those machines or running.
Yeah.
As far as WODs, it's a difficult one to be actual prescriptive with. I mean, you could have one if you do this quicker than your aerobic capacity might be better.
Yeah.
But your efficiency also might be better. So it's not really I can't really be prescriptive with that. It's like do the same circuit faster. I don't really get anything from that. And neither will the person.
So quick question just on that, right? If I'm doing a 6-minute test, that's going to be an all-out effort, or so it's an all-out effort. Therefore, I can expect my heart rate to elevate. I'm not trying to sit and pace it at an aerobic zone.
No, it's all-out effort.
It's an all-out effort.
From there, you get an average.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
And no more than 8 minutes.
I mean, you can do longer, but there's no real benefit.
No benefit of it.
Okay. Cool.
Awesome. So ski, a row, shuttle runs.
So could you just set a timer for 6 minutes and then try and do as many calories as you can?
So I like to use meters on mine. I mean, you can do calories. It's just
or meters. Yeah. And then just try and then just use that as a marker. So I guess it's important to not just do 6 minutes on that piece of equipment every week and just try and get a little bit more meters each week.
Yeah, no. So it will guide your training prescription from here. So from what I do on those pieces of machine, and you've got to be specific with the machine, is like I was saying before with the MAS, it's not just running speed. So you can convert that over for your like concept 2 rolls or any kind of equipment.
Yeah.
So say in 6 minutes, you went 2K on a rower. So then you divide 2K by 6 minutes, and then you get that into a second, and then that gets your meters per second. And that would be 100% of your MAS, so your max aerobic speed. And so now, if you wanted to go 60-second effort at 100% max aerobic speed, so 100% max aerobic speed is the speed that you'll elicit your VO2 max at. You can then times that by your MAS, and that's your target distance. And that's how you can be a bit more prescriptive with your conditioning efforts in the gym. So
then what you might, if that's on a rower, you then might use those times to program for some intervals or whatnot that you might do to improve that. So rather than, and this is what we're going to lead into a little bit afterwards, or we might jump into it now. So that's fantastic for me. I'm going to do that tomorrow, and then I'm going to hit you up for some ideas of some intervals and stuff to do on the rower, right? But how do you do that in a class setting? What's a good way? Like, you want to see people progress, you know that we need to structure the programming, right? But how would we do that? If we've got an idea of what we want to do for our rower or ski intervals and whatnot, it's not going to be, the desired outcome's going to be different possibly for each athlete. Is there a way to work around that, or is there something you use? I mean, you mentioned the heart rate monitor, so I'm guessing that might be, if everyone could have a heart rate monitor, that might be the ideal.
A few gyms are starting to get heart rate monitors in everyone, but they sort of just look like, see the screen, it's just like, yeah, it's high, sweet. Straight up.
Sweet.
It's red.
It's awesome. More just gamerizing it, isn't it?
Yeah, you're not actually getting any better, but it's red. So with the gym DBPT, I always get a tongue twister on that one.
That's okay.
Testing is part of the program. So everyone is prescriptive with their lifts in most good programs, at least. Today, you're going to hit 70% of your 1 RM bench press. Same thing. So you could test each modality, and then it could be, all right, since we're going to go 60-second efforts with 30 seconds rest in between. The 60-second efforts is going to be 100% of your MAS. So Luke, your MAS is 4 meters a second on the rower. So we're going to go to, your target is 240 meters. You have to hit 240 meters. And then the next person, Jesse, yours was 5 meters because you're fitter than Luke.
Yeah,
his would be 300 meters.
Yeah.
Right.
So you keep. I like to keep the time the same because it's a lot easier to use. And then each person has their individual distances to hit.
Okay.
So,
sorry, go on.
So pretty much the answer to that is it has to be, if you want to be specific with your outcome, you want to be specific with your training. There's nothing it's going to be very difficult, especially as we talk across modalities, talk across pieces of equipment, talk across exercises. It's very difficult to be specific with the programming unless you're actually testing, unless everyone knows kind of where they're at. That's pretty much.
I mean, as the saying has, I don't know how old the saying is now. If you're not assessing, you're guessing. So that's a big thing. And I think that is where you can get a lot of, with the guys that like to flog themselves. I love it. Like, I love feeling shit after sessions. Once you start to show people that you're actually quantitatively getting better, your markers are improving, they start to buy into it. They're like, hold on a second. Like, that was my 100% 4 weeks ago. And I smashed that. I was flogged last week and like 4 weeks ago. Now I'm getting that easy.
So we testing every 4 weeks?
I wouldn't test every 4 weeks. I'd probably every 12-week block.
Okay.
You could have another crack at that. But then you can also just test from your actual training. Much like with your lifts, you might go a volume PR and then your 1RM's theoretical 1RM is increased. Same thing if your MAS for 100% might be a certain distance and you're smashing that. And so like you can kind of get a good idea if it's gone up. And then if you want to get a real solid number, then plug it in later on.
Cool.
It depends on time.
Yeah. There's another one we could sort of use would be, let's say we want to run a certain time frame. So let's say I want every athlete to run for 60 seconds, possibly hitting 100 meters. Could you then stagger the athletes? Like a slower athlete might start, at the 25 meter mark. So they're still running at the same time, but they're hitting the same time frame for the same effort. Like, is that a way you could do it in a group format?
Yeah, exactly what we do with rugby. So everyone would start in the same position, and then we'll have, okay, slower boys, you're going to the red. Faster guys, you're going to that. And that's a different kettle of fish with the ASR. And there's a lot of other stuff there. ASR, I wouldn't really apply that with CrossFit, but that's essentially, yes, you can.
Yeah. Cool. That's cool. So it's definitely achievable, but I guess the take home is that we want to be assessing as much as possible and then using the data within our program.
I find with everything, it's a bit of work on the front end, but it makes the training better. You get better results out of it, and a lot less work on the back end. So we're going to test everyone, but then it just makes it targeted and more individualized for each person in your program.
There we have it. So you can fucking train smarter, still enjoy CrossFit, and get better results. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? So we might chuck a template together with a rough kind of, because even in my head, I'm kind of like, well, how would I progress that over 12 weeks? Would it just be like adding 5% each week kind of thing? You know what I mean? To progress that overload. So we might chuck a template together and chuck that up for people to grab if you're listening to this. We'll chuck that.
Bit of a free download.
Bit of a freebie. We'll chuck it in the description.
Good. Awesome.
Absolutely. On your question on lactate, Luke, lactate is a waste product from your higher heart rates or higher intensities. So it doesn't actually, like, that build up in your leg isn't lactate. Lactate actually contributes to energy production through a different pathway. It's actually acidosis in your in the muscle, so hydrogen ion buildup.
Okay.
Just to answer that one for you.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question on that? Because I was just doing some reading the other day. Have you heard of lactate shuttling?
Lactate shuttling, as into the Krebs cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as in it moves from the muscle to a local muscle and then into the blood and.
So it's used as a byproduct to make more energy after.
Yeah.
So it's actually broken down.
Okay. Just throw it out there.
Just
been
gets
doing a
to
bit
that.
more research.
And again, with increased aerobic capacity, you get better at dealing with that and dealing and
Absolutely, yeah. So
essentially delay that burn.
Yeah. So your ability to clear those waste products is increased.
And is that specific to a muscle group?
Yeah. So that's another thing you should touch on with the aerobic capacity. I mean, it's all well and good to build a VO2 max or a peripheral engine to get it bigger and bigger and bigger. Awesome, I can do all this work.
But you need wheels.
You need wheels. Yeah, you need wheels. So your adaptations, specifically peripherally, so at the muscle, is specific to the mode of exercise you're doing. And that's one of the challenges with CrossFit. And that's why having multiple tests for different areas is you can target the actual mode of exercise. So it's very specific to the exercise.
Yeah, because I know if we're probably jumping around a bit, but if I was going to go, all right, I'm going to test my aerobic capacity on the air bike, I know my legs are going to die before, so to speak, my heart rate getting too high. So that would be more of a case of
that'd be more of a case of the resistance on the air bike.
Not so much is that still a way, like an aerobic capacity test though? Because I'm not getting rid of that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Just different.
Mm.
Okay, cool.
Can I ask a question? I did a WOD once.
Sure can.
I did a WOD once, and it was handstand push-ups into squat snatches. And it was in my early days of CrossFit. So my assumption of the workout would be coming off the handstand push-ups that my shoulders would be fried and the squat snatch would be hard for that reason. Turned out that I had jelly legs. And as soon as I received the bar underneath it, I had so much what felt like lactic waste in my legs that I was missing snatches left, right, and center. What's happening there? Why am I working my shoulder and then I'm going to squat?
Dr. Carl.
And the lactate acid is there. Is it because it moves in the leg? Is it because it moves to the bigger muscles, or like what's the go?
So you had jelly legs, yeah?
Yeah.
So I would say, I mean, I don't know, but my assumption on that would be because of gravity. Everyone knows about gravity.
Yeah.
The majority of your blood has shifted down towards your
blood shunting, is it?
No, not really. But down towards the upper body. So when you've got to stand up and do your squat snatches, it's all rushed back. And then it's just an onset there. That's basically what I attribute it to.
Okay, another question. What can we call it's not lactic acid. What do we call it? Like the burn that people get, like, I'm so much lactic acid in my legs, and people are like, it's not lactic acid. Do we just call it lactate waste?
Hydrogen ion buildup.
Without calling it hydrogen ion buildup.
It's HIB, guys.
Yeah, H plus.
H plus.
Okay, cool.
H plus ions. There you go.
Cool.
That's the buildup of it. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well, that was not gonna make it easier.
Yeah, H plus. Everyone's gonna be like, what the fuck's that? And you're just gonna be like lactic acid.
I'll say ring Dr. Carl.
To be honest, like for the average person and like people at gym, like when the guys say at footy training, lactic acid build up, it's just, I mean, you're splitting hairs really. Like they're fatiguing in their legs, and that's the main issue.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. You're weak.
Yeah. So correcting them between the two is not going to change how they're going to adapt to it. So.
Okay. Cool. So I want to know, I hire you as a coach. I want to compete in CrossFit. Knowing that there's loads of mixed modalities, like I've got to be good at gymnastics. I've got to be good at, weightlifting. I've got to be good at conditioning, right? How do you approach that with your programming? Let's say that you do a range of assessments and I'm not as strong as I should be for the sport. Do we take 12 weeks out and just focus on strength, but possibly lose some of my gains, for lack of a better word, in other areas of the sport?
So I for a sport like CrossFit, and how I do most of sports now, is having more of a vertical integration with our programming. So it's everything. There's always a string of everything within the program. Just the percentages change on what we're looking to elicit an adaptation in. So if their strength is lacking, sure, we will still maintain all the other qualities that are needed for CrossFit. However, strength might take up 50%, and then everything kind of takes the back seat.
Yeah. I like it.
Cool.
It's pretty, not as hard as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I thought he was going to go on another tangent.
Okay, so then I say to you, I'm in a CrossFit box,
Mhm.
and I'm following their structure and their programming. How can I implement some of the suggestions that you've given us today, whether it be to develop my aerobic capacity or knowing that my strength is weaker, and still be a part of my community and still follow their programming?
I think it's tough because like there's obviously with CrossFit boxes and with any sort of, I guess we can just call it an organization in general, there's a culture, right? And, a direct conflict with the culture can cause conflict essentially. So implementing this sort of stuff is having conversations with your coaches and potentially just asking like, what's the plan here? Like you might think, oh, I need a bit more of this. And most, if they're a half decent coach, will try and work with you and they might say, look, you might think you need this, but from our assessments, you actually need a bit of this. So whether it's aerobic capacity, strength, or whatever it may be. And then sort of working with them. So like perhaps maybe during the conditioning efforts, instead of going flat out, he or she might prescribe to you more of a continuous effort or more aerobically dominant efforts or something like that. So I think the conversation is the big thing, and it's a people business, really. It's people business.
So building a relationship with your coach that you feel confident enough to be able to have this conversation and say, hey, I listened to a podcast with Dr. Carl, or I read a book, or I got an external assessment done. These were the suggestions. How can we incorporate it within my training, within our box?
Yeah, that's absolutely. Awesome. And if they tell you to F off, then probably go to a new spot. Eh?
Like, there's only so much you can do, right? Like in that group setting, like, all right, what if my coach is an idiot? What if he's programming 6 hard WODs a week? Like, what if? Like, if everything that they're doing is very much against everything else that people are suggesting, like professionals in their, like experts in their kind of field, you probably need to reassess where you're training and who your coach is, essentially. There's only so much you can do. You're paying someone for a service, and if you're not, getting the results based off that, I think is probably the biggest one. You probably
that's the thing.
Reassessing.
Like, with like the HIIT training, right? Like, I'm sure if you went to them and like, I want to do some more, like I'm looking to get some performance out of this, like I want to do some more targeted stuff, they'd be like, oh no, we do HIIT training here, because for the majority, it gives you a little bit of an endorphin flush. Your heart rate gets up. I feel worked at the end of it. But realistically, if you want to compete as an athlete in a sport, you need to start getting more targeted and focused with your training. Even if you're just doing CrossFit as an everyday gym goer and you want to get better at it, those sort of workouts, although the gains are quick, they stagnate very quickly. So
just like strength, right? Just
like strength, you gotta sit back and align. So realize what your goals are. Like, are you okay doing this? Okay, fine. Each their own. Do you HIIT sessions every week?
Yeah.
Do you want to see a bit more increase in your performance? Okay, now I actually need to be targeted with this.
I think one thing I've always done with my clients in regards to strength is, although it's a celebration of them possibly hitting a new PB, it's also a good indicator for me of what I've got to program next. So seeing maybe where the movement breaks down or what might be a weaker point in the lift. So you could do similar with like your high intensity workout, sort of see where you're lagging in CrossFit, like whether it be your high volume of pull-ups or, for most people, something like a box jump or something like that. And then stepping it back a little bit and working on that to become more efficient at the movement.
Yeah, well, that's a big thing as well. Like we touched on the big motor. Like if we compare to CrossFit guys head to head, they have the same VO2 max. One of them's clean form is shit house. The other's smooth, gets it right up to the rack position, squats, whatever. Like there's no leakage of energy, very efficient. They'll be able to perform much more longer before the other guy's flogged himself and he's thrown up in a bucket or something like that. So I think pulling it back a bit and being more technically proficient. I do the same stuff with my field sport athlete guys. So being more technically proficient at running, minimizing your energy leaks. So all the energy you are putting into the movement is going into the movement.
Yeah. So I think that's a huge thing, especially in the CrossFit realm, is that I guess when we're talking about CrossFit,
you see technical breakdown all the time.
Technical breakdown is going to be a limiting factor in your fitness.
It's a limiting factor, and it's a distinguishing factor between high performers.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And some people just think that thrashing themselves more is going to improve their fitness, but if they don't, lose their ego a little bit and become a better mover or become more efficient, they're not going to get any fitter, so to speak, within that realm.
Exactly right. If you're just thrashing yourself and the movement's shit, well, the movement's going to remain shit. So I say, like, if it looks shit fresh, it's going to look even worse if it's fatigue. So build slowly. Even you can use those blocks of lower intensity to go a movement where we're doing it more of a strength workout, where we refine our technique. Okay, so now we're going to start incorporating into a low intensity setting, and it can be low intensity intervals. Refining our technique, and then we move into more moderate intensity. So we're starting to up our speed or load or difficulty of the task. And then when we've perfected that, we can really go into our high intensity stuff under fatigue and refining our movement.
Yeah. And so that'd be like right at the end, like how specific do we have to be? So like say in a lot of workouts, it's going to be, having a high rate and high heart rate and having to move a heavy load. So say I can, power clean 80 kilo fresh. Whereas when my heart rate's at 150 or 160, 170, that weight, I kind of break down. So is it a case of getting your heart rate to 150 and then trying to lift heavy, or is it just getting more efficient in that movement pattern, more efficient, like a better aerobic capacity, and then putting them together, like taking the parts away, training them separately, improving them, and then that'll be an overall better.
Yeah. So you can use like the concept of like separating and integrating. So we're separating the skills and the components that contribute to it, and then we're getting proficient at those. Yeah. And then we're integrating it. And also, if you get a stronger power lift. Yeah. Well, then the relative percentage to your max is going to be less, right? Yeah. So that weight then becomes easier.
Well, I can power clean 200, so it was just an example.
No drama.
200 pounds. 200 pounds. I was listening to Chris Hinshaw yesterday, and he does a lot of the aerobic work for CrossFit, and he was talking about, putting the two together, right? So working for a certain time frame at a certain perceived effort, and then possibly just getting a dowel stick and just going and drilling some squat snatches just to get, a lot of the times what he's saying is CrossFitters go and do a high intensity workout and they just lay on the floor with their legs up in the air, where he's saying, we can get better at being able to move on to the next WOD or doing the next piece of whether it be a 3-minute AMRAP into a max clean and jerk or something like that, putting those two together, but in not a lower skill, because a snatch is still a complex movement, but taking away the load of intensity. It, using a dowel stick, taking away the intensity, and getting better at removing, those heavy legs and moving
H plus
under fatigue.
H plus.
Yeah, that's it.
Is that a good way you could sort of put it together as well?
That's a great way. So it's sort of kind of leads into like mental toughness that everyone sort of believes is a thing, right? So like mental toughness, in my opinion, at least, it's stress inoculation. So getting used to a stress, and then you're able to deal with that better. So it's contextual to the task. So like that with the dowel rod, after I've done a RPE 9 effort on the air bike, I come off and do my snatches. If I jump straight to my 1RM, like I'm not mentally, and my system is not ready for that stress.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you I think is it Kieran and Flat? He said this one. It's a very good example. It's when you're learning to swim, do you jump straight in the water?
No.
No. You put your foot in the water first, right? And then you hop in waist deep with your arm on the side of the pool, and then you go down. Same thing with that. So we start with the dowel rod.
Yeah.
All right, and then we might start with an empty barbell, and then we might do it under 40 kilos, and then we might just build up the percentage over time and time again. And not only does it drill your actual system to deal with it, but mentally as well. So I'm under fatigue and I've got this weight, it becomes less of a deal. Less of
it's a good way. Yeah. I think the first time I got into a pool, I did an ultra flip.
Classic.
From memory.
Just like those ass bars, eh?
From memory.
That's been awesome.
Yeah.
I think there's probably just like 2 questions we sort of wanted to ask you to sort of finish off.
Yo.
One question I'm just going to ask, just because we hear it a lot, and probably Luke as well doing the nutrition coaching. A lot of the fear around developing your aerobic system or doing cardio is losing muscle mass or strength. What's your thoughts around that? And what's some, I guess, evidence-based knowledge you can share with them to sort of eliminate that belief?
Well, you're not 100% wrong when you think of that. So there is such thing as an interference effect. It's just not as profound as people think it is. It's not as a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, I just did a heavy weight session and I went for a run. All my weight gains are gone. See you later. So like with to gain weight, you've got to be in a calorie surplus. So that's the main factor of putting on your weight. And as far as strength and muscle mass, for me, sort of just sequencing our training to have as similar adaptation or similar sort of pathways as possible. So with our strength work, we might have more lower body focused conditioning work or anything like that. And then if we are going to do a strength workout and a conditioning workout on the same day, try and space it out as much as possible, basically. So like maybe do a strength workout in the morning and conditioning in the afternoon. So realistically, like it's not for the everyday person, like it's not an issue.
Maybe upper lower if you're doing same day. Like maybe if you're doing like a run or something, like upper strength or something. Would that work?
Yeah. That could definitely work.
Yep.
So you're not going to lose your gains, guys.
You're not going to lose your gains, but a lot of the time it's actually complementary as well. So as far as like your muscles' ability to utilize the oxygen, we see adaptations from resistance training and aerobic training. So they kind of complement each other there. So like it's not relax, guys, relax.
Yeah,
so I could get a bigger pump. Is that what you mean?
A bit of a bigger pump, yeah.
And I guess one thing that sort of interests me and Luke, as we're always trying to develop and grow as people and coaches, is what's one piece of advice you've been given from a coach or a mentor that's helped, that you think is worth sharing, or that's helped shape you as a person and coach?
I had a good think about this one. For me, it'd be a coach in the States at Landau Performance, Justin Starb. I'll make sure he listens to this. It's to be a jungle lion and not a zoo lion. So what that means is, are you going to be hand-fed everything and everything given to you and wait for your food, or are you going to go out and get that food?
Ooh,
I love that.
Yourself.
I got chills.
Yeah, that's the best one I've had.
Yeah,
that's good.
That's fantastic, mate. That's good. Thank you for sharing.
Is that why the growth, the beard?
Exactly. I kind of got more jungle on.
Yeah, I was going to say it looks a little bit zoom. Like.
I got a gym yesterday just for the podcast.
Buddy, I really enjoyed that. I've learned a lot myself today, and I think there's so much good information that your everyday athlete can go and implement into their training. And I think the benefits of improving your aerobic capacity for CrossFit is profound. So like if you're not working on it, and if you're not taking on this advice, you're really missing out.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll put, as I said, we'll put together a bit of an ebook kind of template thing where people can, probably test, and then a rough kind of guideline how they could program exactly the progressions that we're talking about. So
yeah, we'll put together basically a free download with some of the testing protocols that Carl's mentioned, and give you a bit of an understanding on why you're doing them and how you can implement it into your training. Carl, how can people find you?
So it's at Sledge Strength on Instagram and Facebook, and then YouTube is Sledge Strength as well, and www.sledgestrength.com.au.
Fantastic, guys. Head over, give them a follow. Gives out loads of good free content, and there's lots of training videos which you can implement basically straight away on YouTube. He puts out lots of good content.
Yeah, so YouTube's good.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on again today, mate. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, bro.